Standing on my porch after a grueling 12-hour shift, still in my scrubs, I was met with the mocking blink of the security camera. My feet ached and my back was in agony, desperate for the comfort of my own bed. Instead, I was confronted with Patricia's smug expression through the doorbell camera as I tried to absorb her words. "I mean it, Emma," Patricia continued, her perfectly manicured nails tapping out of view. "David's come to his senses. This house belongs to our family, and you were never a match for it or for him. Let me introduce myself. I am Emma Chin, and at 32, I was living the worst nightmare imaginable for a daughter-in-law. Unlike many women who might be taken by surprise, I saw this coming. Patricia Williams had been set on ruining my marriage to her beloved son David since our initial meeting 5 years ago. Initially, it was small remarks, snide comments about my Chinese heritage at family gatherings, and constant criticism of my career as a doctor. But when will you have time for children? She wasn't subtle in her attempts to pair David with her friends' daughters either. In the past year, though, things had intensified from passive-aggressive to outright hostility. This night was evidently her grand finale. Adjusting my grip on my work bag, I kept my gaze steady on the camera. "Where's David?" I asked, maintaining a composed voice. "I would like to hear this from him." A crackle came through the speaker as Patricia laughed. "He's not here, Emma. He's at our house, sorting things out. He left a note for you." She held up what looked like a hastily written message. "No need," I replied, pulling out my phone. "I'll call him myself." Her voice was dripping with satisfaction. "Oh, he's changed his number. Fresh start, and everything. Your things are in those boxes on the porch, just take them and go, Emma. Don't make this more complicated than it has to be." I glanced at the 3 neatly stacked cardboard boxes by the door, which certainly hadn't been there this morning when I left for work. Clothes were spilling out of the top one, shoved carelessly inside. My throat tightened with anger rather than sadness. "Patricia," I said calmly, "I'm giving you one chance to open this door and explain what's really going on. Right now, you're committing several crimes, and trust me, you don't want me to list them." "Crimes?" she scoffed. "This is my son's house. He has every right to—" "This is my house," I interrupted sharply. "My name is on the deed. I paid for it with my money, and what you're doing now is illegal entry, theft, and harassment, to start." There was a pause where I could almost hear her thoughts racing. "David told me it was his house," she finally said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. I smiled, recalling the day I had purchased the place. David had been hesitant about it. Insisting on having my name alone on the deed was something I did. I told him it was for tax reasons, but, truthfully, it was because I had observed Patricia's manipulative ways with him. Her use of money and guilt to control every aspect of his life was concerning. I wanted to ensure she had no claim to my home. I offered, "Shall I have my lawyer explain it to you?" Already dialing Jennifer's number on my phone. She'd gladly walk Patricia through just how much trouble she was really in. "You're bluffing," Patricia retorted, though I detected fear creeping into her voice. "David would never allow you," she added. I cut in. "I'm not bluffing, and I've had enough of this conversation through a camera. You have precisely 30 minutes to open this door and vacate my house, or I'll involve the police. The choice is yours, Patricia." As I headed back to my vehicle and settled into the driver's seat, my hands trembled slightly while I pulled out my phone, but my thinking was clear. Since last Christmas, when I overheard Patricia urging David to man up and seize control of his life, I had been gearing up for a moment like this. I began chronicling everything at that point, every intimidating message, every manipulative call, and every unscheduled visit where she tried to catch me in the wrong. I contacted Jennifer, my lawyer and a dear friend from college. She answered on the second ring. "Let me guess," she remarked. "The monster-in-law finally revealed her true colors." "She changed my lock, claiming David is leaving me," I replied, while watching the house. Patricia had barricaded herself inside, weaving a tale about David staying with them to process everything. Jennifer gasped, followed by the sound of typing. "Have you tried speaking with David?" she asked. "Can't reach him." According to Patricia, David changed his number. I paused as a thought struck me. She's done something to him, Jen. This isn't like him. Jennifer offered to call the police. I'll hold off for now, but be on standby, I decided. And, Emma, please be careful. Desperate individuals take desperate actions. I hung up and scrolled through my contacts until I found who I needed, Mark Williams, David's younger brother. He answered almost immediately. Emma, thank God. I've been trying to contact David all day, he said. My heart sank. You can't reach him either? No, and Mom's been acting strange. She told me he was working late, but when I called his office, they said he didn't come in today. Mark's voice was tense with worry. I quickly briefed him, observing as lights turned on and off inside my house. Patricia was clearly agitated, likely plotting her next move. Holy, Mark breathed upon hearing the full story. I knew Mom was unstable, but this is next level. Can you come over? I asked. And bring your key to your parent house. I suspect that's where David is. 20 minutes later, Mark met me outside, his expression grim as he took in the sight of boxes on the porch. Patricia had yet to emerge. The surveillance camera had been disabled. She likely figured out how to turn it off. I contacted Dad, Mark mentioned softly as he joined me at my car. His demeanor was tense, reflecting exactly like David's, which made my heart ache. I'm really sorry, Emma. I knew Mom was having issues, but it's not your fault, I assured him, glancing at my phone again with hope. Still no message from David. Shall we head to your parents' house now? Mark nodded, spinning his key ring absent-mindedly around his finger. Do you really think she's keeping him there? Where else would she take him? I replied. We decided to drive separately in case we needed to bring David back. The journey to the Williams mansion seemed unusually long, with every second filled with worry. Was David safe? Had Patricia pushed him too far? And what exactly had she done to convince him to comply with all this? Upon reaching the house, it seemed still and dark, though Patria's Mercedes was parked in the driveway beside David's Audi. The sight of his car made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel. He was certainly here. Quietly, Mark unlocked the door, and we entered, moving stealthily through the perfectly arranged house. Every detail was in place, reflecting Patricia's intense desire for control. Check the guest rooms. I leaned over and whispered to Mark. I'll look in the study. He nodded and made his way upstairs, while I headed toward Robert Williams' study, a place where David always felt secure, even as a child, because Patricia seldom entered it. The study door was locked, yet light seeped faintly from beneath. With my heart racing, I knocked gently. Dad, I called. From behind the door, David's voice, sounding groggy and uncertain, responded. Is that you? David, it's Emma. I identified myself. Can you open the door? I heard a rustling and footsteps before the door opened a crack, revealing David looking disheveled and out of sorts. His eyes seemed unfocused, and he appeared unsteady as he gaped at me. Emma, he slurred, blinking in confusion. What are you doing here? What did Mom give you? I pushed the door fully open and caught him as he stumbled. Just something she gave me to help me sleep, he muttered, leaning heavily on me. Said I was too stressed and needed to rest. Anger bubbled within me as I guided him to the leather couch. Patricia had surely drugged him, probably with sleeping pills or something more potent, which also explained his compliance with her schemes. Mark. I called softly yet urgently. In here. Mark stepped into the room, brow furrowed as he assessed his brother's state. For Christ's sake, he muttered. Is he drugged? I nodded, checking David's pupils. They were pinpoints. Call an ambulance. The following hours passed in a whirlwind. Paramedics arrived, followed closely by the police. David was transported to a hospital, thankfully a reputable one across town. Patricia was nowhere to be seen, but her credit card records indicated she had booked a flight to her sister's home in Florida. Jennifer made it to the hospital just as they completed David's toxicology report. The test results corroborated what I had suspected all along. Jennifer reviewed the report grimly. We can add attempted murder to the charges, she stated, listing off breaking and entering, theft, and false imprisonment. I don't care about charges right now, I interrupted, glancing at David through the observation window. I just want him safe. Mark had already secured the house, changing the lock again, while the police had documented everything, including Patricia's hasty attempt to remove evidence. She tried to delete the security footage, but I had already backed it up to the cloud, preserving every smug word and threat for court. David finally awoke properly around midnight, the drugs clearing from his system. Sitting by his bed, I saw his eyes open, clear and alert for the first time in days. Emma, he reached for my hand, his voice hoarse. What happened? Your mother, I said softly, squeezing his fingers. She's been drugging you for days, maybe longer. She tried to make it seem like you'd left me. His face crumpled as memories flooded back. The tea, he whispered. She kept bringing me tea, saying it would help with my stress, and then everything got fuzzy. I remember her talking about the house, about you, but it felt like I was underwater. I couldn't think straight. I held him as he broke down, his body shaking with sobs of rage and betrayal. This strong, kind man, who always tried to see the best in everyone, even his mother, was finally facing the truth about her. I'm so sorry, he kept saying. I should have seen it all these years. I should have protected you from her. Hey, I said, cupping his face in my hands and making him look at me. You have nothing to be sorry for. She's sick, David. This isn't your fault. Police caught up with Patricia 3 days later at her sister's house in Tampa. She had been planning to flee to the Cayman Islands, where the Williams family held accounts spanning generations. Instead, she was arrested and extradited back to face charges. The evidence was overwhelming, not just from that day, but years of documented harassment, threats, and manipulation. There were toxicology reports from David's system, the security footage, evidence of illegal entry into our home, and the carefully orchestrated attempt to separate us and take control of David's life. Robert Williams finally broke his silence when the full extent of his wife's actions surfaced. He filed for divorce and provided even more evidence, years of hidden cameras in their home showing Patricia's escalating behavior and secret recordings of her planning to remove Emma from the picture by any means. Despite his father's attempts to handle things privately, David insisted on pressing charges and testified against his mother at the trial. His voice was steady as he detailed her systematic poisoning, exploiting his trust to drug him into compliance. Patricia was sentenced to 15 years for her crimes. She seemed smaller as they led her away, her meticulously maintained facade crumbling. Beneath the facade of a desperate, controlling woman, Patricia revealed herself. When she handed over the documents, she couldn't even meet David's eyes. The aftermath was far from easy. David sought therapy to work through the betrayal, to comprehend how his mother's manipulative behavior had shaped him. I stood by his side throughout his journey, watching him gradually strengthen and free himself from the binding web she had spun around him. We decided to sell the house, as it was filled with too many painful memories. Instead, we purchased a small farm outside the city, somewhere peaceful, where we could start anew. Mark and his wife visited frequently, along with Robert, who was learning to be a father without Patricia's influence looming over him. One evening, about a year after the turmoil, David and I were sitting on our new porch, admiring the sunset. He looked at me, his eyes clear and present, unlike the haze they held under his mother's domination. You knew, didn't you? He asked softly. That's why the house was in your name, why you recorded everything. You realized what she was capable of long before any of us did. I nodded, squeezing his hand gently. I hoped I was wrong, but I needed to be prepared, just in case, I replied. He brought my fingers to his lips, tenderly kissing them. Thank you, he whispered, for fighting for us when I couldn't. We continued to sit in quiet companionship, watching the sunset transition from orange to purple. Sometimes life's worst moments guide us to exactly where we need to be. Patricia attempted to destroy us, but instead, she fortified us. The future lay vast and open, filled with possibilities untethered from control or manipulation. It was centered on love, trust, and the mutual understanding that we would always defend each other. Occasionally, a letter arrives from prison. Patricia's attempt to justify or manipulate, even from behind bars. We don't read them anymore. They're filed away just in case, because one valuable lesson learned is that you can never be too prepared. Our focus now is on healing, on building a family grounded in love and respect rather than control and fear. Patricia's efforts to tear us apart only revealed our strength in enduring together. Some nights, when silence blankets the house and David sleeps peacefully beside me, I remember that fateful moment on the porch. Looking through the security camera at Patricia's smug face, she thought she had won, believed she had finally rid herself of me. She never grasped that genuine love isn't about control, but about standing united amidst chaos. This is the lesson we carry forward, the story we will share with our children, not one of darkness but of the light we discovered on the other side. For in the end, it's love that prevails, not the smothering, controlling kind that Patricia believed in, but a love that liberates, strengthens, and enables you to realize your true self. And that is unquestionably worth fighting for.